Top of the morning to you. It's the day after St. Patrick's Day, and we've all got leftovers. Because you're supposed to make too much, right? So now what do you end up doing with that? I think the one thing that everybody immediately thinks of, just because it's like really good and it's pretty simple, is a corned beef hash. And you can see I've got quite a bit left over. Today, we're gonna be doing a corned beef hash. So as you can see here, I have some pre-cooked corned beef. I have the pre-cooked, cooked, whatever, cabbage. I've got the potatoes, and I've got some carrots. And for this one, I ended up using the little Yukon Golds because I like those. So if you boil your potatoes with the skin on, it's not bad when you serve it fresh that night or that day, whatever. But the following day when you're doing a hash, it's probably a good idea to take the skin off, but don't sit there and kind of try to peel them. Just grab a paper towel and just through pure friction, the skin comes right off, right? Oop. Hey, come back here. Basically, it's chopping things up. It's a hash. It's really one of those dishes, yet again, that you don't really need a recipe for the most part. You just go with what you got, and however it comes out, it comes out. So if you don't have more potatoes, you just don't use more potatoes. If you got more cabbage, use some cabbage. I am going to start by cutting up some of my corned beef. Some people will cut them large, and some people won't. There are those who believe that the corned beef hash should be chunky. And there are those who believe that it should not be. It should be more akin to the corned beef hash that comes out of a can because it's sort of all mushed up. I'm cutting it up like this because I know in tossing it in the pan, it's gonna break up anyway. So we're gonna end up getting a little bit of different textures going on in there. Okay, there's the beef. And this recipe is for 4 people. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 for the pan and 1 for the cook. I got them, might as well use them, right? So I'm gonna do the same thing with the potatoes. And because these are waxy potatoes, they work with you. They don't end up falling apart. See that? They keep their shape. Isn't that nice? Okay, so we're gonna cut up the potatoes. Then, of course, we have the carrots. I definitely do like to have them cut a little smaller. Now, this is a great dish, obviously, for brunch, right? Or if you're entertaining, have people come over, because you can make the hash ahead of time, keep it warm, and then serve it. Just warm it up again. And if you're doing it with eggs, just warm it up, and the only thing you got left to do is the egg. This technique you can basically use with anything. So if you have boiled chicken, right? Or some sort of pork or what have you, just treat it the same way. If I have cabbage left over, I will cut it into chiffonade like this, and then I'll add it at the very end, and I'll show you why when we get it over to the stove. And as you can see, I've already got some chopped up fresh onion. If you have onion in your corned beef and cabbage, some people put onion in there, right? You can use that as well, but it's always good to use some fresh onion as well when you're doing the hash part of it. And then I have some fresh chives, just because you always want a little pop of green, and I like the flavor of the chives in there. If you don't have chives, you can use Italian flat leaf parsley or nothing. And butter, because life is better with butter. All right, let's go to the stove. I got a cast iron skillet that's warming over moderately high heat. Some people like to use non-stick pan. You can do that as well, or just a regular skillet. I wouldn't recommend that because that will stick. But either a cast iron skillet or a non-stick should be fine. I like the cast iron because you really get some serious heat going on, and that gives you the crusty bits, because you gotta have the crusty bits, right? So before I put the butter in, I'm gonna start with a little bit of oil because that will prevent the butter from burning. I want the flavor of butter. Let the butter bathe. There we go. And I'm gonna put in maybe half this onion. And you want your onions to get nice and translucent. Maybe a little bit of color in there. They're taking a little bit of color right now because the butter just started to brown, so that's fine. You definitely don't want your onions to burn. This pan I'm going to reserve for the eggs that I'm gonna put on top, because you can serve the hash by itself, right? Nothing wrong with it, but I think most people like eggs on theirs. You can poach yours, you can fry it, you can do whatever you want with your eggs. I'm going to do sunny side up, or maybe over easy, I don't know. I'm just kind of going with it. Okay, once your onions are soft, you can go ahead and put in your beef. Okay, when you start tossing the beef around and you're whacking it with the wooden spoon or what have you, some of it will break apart, which is fine. Then you add the potatoes and the carrot. Now remember, everything is already cooked. The object of the game is to cook everything together in enough fat and over high enough heat. You don't want to burn it, but over high enough heat so that you end up getting those crispy bits, right? Everybody likes those crispy bits. And if you don't, you should. That's another discussion. If you don't have enough fat in here, you're not going to get crispy bits. You're going to end up getting burn bits because there's not enough fat to keep your ingredients sizzling. Now you can see already some of the meat is starting to fall apart a bit, and that's perfectly fine. Gives you a little bit more textural contrast. Okay. Now, here's what I like to do. If I need a little bit more, I will add a little bit more here and there. Not a lot. I mean, you don't want it greasy. That's probably like 2 teaspoons, really. Here's the hard part. Leave it alone. Seriously. Don't, if you have the urge to go over and touch it and stir it or think it's burning, just don't. Because now what you want to happen is like when you're searing a steak, you want a crust to form, okay? So if you keep stirring it like a stir fry, you're not gonna get that crust to form because you keep tossing it. So just let everything just kind of sit there. And what will happen is the bottom will start to cook much faster, obviously, than the top. And then it'll start to crisp. And then at that point, you check it. And then we'll go ahead and we'll start stirring it a little bit. So it's let it sit, crisp up, stir, let it sit, crisp up, stir, until you get the texture just right. And once you're there, probably a couple of turns or more, right? Once you're there, you're done. This is a great dish to practice your senses with, because as it starts to do what it's supposed to do at the bottom, you know, crisp up,
the smell is going to start changing. So it smells one way, right? When you put the beef in, then it smells another way when you put all the other stuff in. And now that it's beginning to brown, it's starting to smell different. So each time you make something like this, or you make this dish, right? You sort of train your nose to look for that smell, and then you know, time to turn it, right? So if the recipe says, brown for 4 minutes or 5 minutes, don't stand there and do that. Trust this, because that will screw you up. That won't. So now to check it, flip it over. There, see that? That's what we're wanting. That's what we're wanting. See that? That's not burned. That's crispy. That's the bits we want. Okay, so you can see we got some crispy bits going on. And what I've done is I've just stirred it. I'm gonna leave it alone again. Okay, time to check it again. There, we got more crispies going on. Got more crispies going on. And that equals flavor! Okay, at this point, we have reached the beginning of the end. And why do I say that? Some people like it just like that. Some people like it cooked a little more. Some people really want theirs crispy and brown. So it's all a matter of preference. Okay, yes, I'm gonna salt it just a bit, even though there's salt in the corned beef. Not much. And you gotta have pepper. So at this point, you basically just cook it to the point that you would like it, or your guests would like it. Or you can experiment and see how you like it cooked even more. I cook mine like this sometimes I cook it more. Just depends on my mood. And that is that. So I threw in the cabbage at the very last moment because I don't want to really cook that until it's crispy. But look at that. Ooh. See? It's not greasy or oily, even though we started with what some of you would think was a lot of fat, but it's really not. That would be the way you would serve it. You could actually put just some chives on there, right? Let it pop some green, isn't that nice? Now you're talking. Corned beef hash and eggs. Let's give this puppy a try. Ooh, ooh. That is so good. It's damn good. You gotta try this. All it's gonna depend on what you got at hand, what kind of corned beef you got, what kind of potatoes you use, but it doesn't really matter. You just make it your own and everyone is gonna love this, with or without the eggs. So please subscribe, please like, because I like you. And if you could ring that bell, the bells of Ireland. That would be cool. Until next time. How do you say bon appetit in Irish? I have no idea, but damn, that's good.